Hello, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest Great Lakes area agronomist, and welcome back for another edition of the Golden Harvest Agronomy In Action podcast. So today is June the 19th, and it's been another crazy weather week for us across the area. More strong storm fronts across the region, causing some hail damage and additional flooding on those poorly drained soils, but at least we didn't get the 2 to 3 inches of rain they were originally forecasting. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to cover the following. One, the importance of June the 21st, other than it just being Father's Day. Secondly, why it matters to corn farmers that lightning bugs are starting to fly around. And 3, I've gotten a lot of pictures this week, so I'll share some interesting stories on what's going on out in the fields in our area right now. So grab your cup of coffee and let's talk some agronomy. Now, first off, it's hard to believe that we are only a few days from June 21st, which is the summer solstice, or, that time of the year where our days start getting shorter. Now, with this in mind, in addition to celebrating all those fathers this Sunday, we will also have the opportunity to celebrate the start of flowering on our soybean plants. Now, this is really kind of an interesting process with soybeans. Now, being that they develop based on photoperiod and not on the collection of heat units, the onset of longer nights annually encourages the slowing of vegetative growth and the initiation of reproductive growth. Now, of course, in our part of the world, we raise what's called indeterminate soybeans, whereas down south they raise what are known as determinate soybeans. Now, the difference is that, determinate soybeans do all of their vegetative growth first, and then they put on, that plant energy into reproductive growth. Now, with our indeterminate soybeans, it's actually more of a gradual energy shift. So as we get these longer nights, the plant energy gradually moves from producing plant structure to producing flowers, pods, and seeds. Now, this is a good thing for us because with the current height of our soybean crop across the area, we still need a lot of plant growth to have more places to put flowers over the next few months. This is also why we encourage folks to plant a little thicker population when planting soybeans later in the year. When planted thick, these plants will now compete for sunlight, therefore encouraging more plant growth in a time when these plants are wanting to shift their energy to reproductive activities. That's also kind of interesting that, when we have the opportunity to plant soybeans early, like in April, we can actually see some soybean plants that start flowering before the 21st of June, which, may be part of the reason why early planted soybeans tend to be higher yielding soybeans. Now, unfortunately, for most of us in the area this year, we just didn't have that window to get many beans planted in April. Next, let's talk about lightning bugs. Now, I suspect some of you out there asking yourselves, why in the world would my agronomist be talking about lightning bugs in reference to corn production? I've never heard of lightning bugs causing damage to crops. And you'd be right. So the reason I bring up the fact that I saw my first lightning bugs this week is because of the way that their life cycles actually helps us to better understand the life cycle of an insect that we do care about in the production of corn on corn acres, and that is the life cycle of the corn rootworm. Now, this relationship is simple, and when we start to see lightning bugs fly, we know that we have accumulated enough heat units for the rootworm eggs in the soil to hatch. Now, like all insects, corn rootworm have 4 parts of their life cycle: egg, larvae, which of course is that worm stage, the pupa, and then the adult. Now, while the lightning bugs are coming out of their pupa stage and starting that adult part of their life cycle, flying around, the corn rootworms are hatching from their eggs and starting their larval part of their life cycle. Now, this is important because it's when the corn rootworm do their greatest damage to corn roots. So, over the next few weeks, corn rootworm will be feeding on our corn roots, and if you want to see the extent of their damage, just plan on digging some roots in about 3 weeks from now. And if you didn't successfully control the rootworm in your corn-on-corn fields, the damage will be evident. Unfortunately, there is no rescue treatment for corn rootworm, but knowing if you have damage this year will help you in managing for an early harvest and also give you time to get a head start on how you'll better manage corn rootworm in these fields next year. Now, finally, it's always interesting this time of the year because it's the time of year when folks start sending me a plethora of photos of things going on in their fields, and I just love it. Helping to identify problems and discussing solutions, that's just one of the favorite parts of my job. Now, unfortunately, there is no way I can personally visit all the challenges of a growing season across my geography, but with the use of photos and videos and even Snapchat, I can easily multiply my efforts and then personally visit those fields that pictures maybe just don't tell the whole story. Now, this week I got multiple photos of corn with hail damage. The good news is that even though the plants were shredded, they weren't dead or even really damaged to a point of huge yield loss potential. Now, yes, you are correct. We never want corn to have a bad day, but these younger plants can withstand a fair amount of damage early and then quickly outgrow it. Now, as far as management in this situation, I do recommend the application of a fungicide on these plants once they recover and have some viable tissue regrowth to absorb the fungicide application. Now, this will help to ward off any diseases that could easily enter into the plant through the openings created by that hail damage. I also got photos of soybeans with white around the edges of the leaf. This is a strong indicator of potassium deficiency, but in this case, I suspect this potassium deficiency was caused not by the lack of potassium, but instead by compaction. I often see this issue where soils are compacted. Soybean roots just can't get down and mine the needed potassium out of the soil and then end up showing this foliar symptomology. Now, the long-term solution is to take care of the compaction after harvest, and if this issue is in a large enough area, you might want to consider some foliar feeding throughout the season in those areas. Now, speaking of soybean foliar symptomology, I also went on a call this week on some yellow-looking beans on some black sands. Now, the leaves were showing interveinal chlorosis, which is just a fancy way of saying that the veins in the leaf were green while the area surrounding the veins were turning yellow. Now, this time of the year, this is a telltale sign of soybeans showing manganese or Mg deficiency. This is commonly seen in soils with higher pHs where even if there's plenty of manganese in the soil, the high pH just won't let the plant take it up. Therefore, the only option is to apply foliar manganese to get those plants to green back up and keep them healthy. Now, the challenge in these fields is that to keep them green, multiple applications of foliar manganese will need to be made throughout the summer if we want to achieve higher yields from these otherwise pretty productive soils. Now, on a different note, I was excited to get photos of some painted up corn, as discussed on last week's podcast. Bob Carland out of Owasso, Michigan, he took the time and painted one of his plants up, and then he took pictures of it and sent it my way. After that few days of growth, you could really see that growth on those plants, and it's just a fun thing to do this time of the year. So appreciate that, Bob. And, to wrap up this week's podcast, I hope you enjoyed learning about the importance of June the 21st to soybeans, understanding how lightning bugs indicate the start of corn rootworm hatch, and, even enjoyed hearing about some of my photos and service calls this past week. Thanks again for turning into this week's Golden Harvest Agronomy in Action podcast. Stay patient, stay safe, and I'll see you in the field.